hoping sometimes I didn't even wake up because I was just so distraught about everything. But on the 30th morning, I woke up being sort of fed up. I was sort of done with feeling like this, and just really wanted something to shift. So I just demanded something needs to shift, and it's going to happen right now. I had some experience with meditation, and I just thought sometimes good things happen when you meditate. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just sit down on the floor and sit there until things change. And that lasted for 3 hours. And all of a sudden, there was this very vivid voice asking me, Gideon, why don't you walk from Denmark to Santiago? It was very vivid. I looked around really like something was talking to me and felt inspired. I smiled. It was the first time I felt inspired for some time.
You packed up and started a 5 months journey across Europe just 2 weeks after this moment.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage the practical mind's natural instinct to overthink, delay, or demand a flawless plan before taking the first step?
Sometimes when I have talked to people about the difference between our head and our heart is that, we seem to make decisions with our head. But if we follow our heart, we don't really need to make one. We just need to follow it.
I completely agree with you 100%, Gideon. Yeah, and it's a fact. Actually, also scientifically, recently have been shared some documentation that the heart itself has a mind itself. And of course our brain, another mind. So Gideon, as we have mentioned and talked about it earlier, your upcoming book, it's almost out on 22nd of June this year. What is the primary shift in consciousness you would like people to experience regarding their own potential for radical change?
I think the most important thing in terms of the journey that I experienced myself, but also the book, The Pilgrim Spirit, is that first of all, you don't need to walk to get a sense of what it's like to walk. But what's important is who you become along the way. That's what's important. If things are hard, challenging, it matters, but keep going, take the steps, never give up, keep going. No matter what happens in life, it's hard sometimes, but keep going.
Hello everyone, today's conversation will bypass surface level wellness trends to explore the raw spiritual transformations. Please allow me to present Gideon Enok. Hello Gideon and welcome. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
We have been in contact in regards to a really powerful story that you have been through recently and for quite a while now.
Yes, so my name is Gideon. I'm from Denmark. I have traveled 16 plus years and walked 7,000 plus kilometers with a backpack. And half of that distance was walked from between Denmark and Santiago and Finisterre during the 2020 pandemic. So, that's sort of the biggest adventure of my life that has gotten to where I am now.
Gideon, you shared that after a breakup, you faced a period of intense frustration. But one morning, you explicitly intended a great change. What shifted internally on that specific morning that turned raw frustration into focused intentionality?
Yes, so I think the core of it was that relationship was a very short one. It was only 3 months long, but it hit me really hard because I sort of returned to a cycle I wished I had left, wished I had, let go of. But I sort of was shot back in this feeling of being stuck and not good enough and all this stuff, and moved out of her place and went into this red farmhouse in the middle of nowhere and felt a little lost, I guess, and just frustrated about my current situation and still not really being sure about my path and all that stuff. And I began to walk a lot those days. So in the morning and during the day and during the evening, I just did short walks. And that was sort of kept me going and moving. And then on the 30th morning, actually every morning I was sort of frustrated, hoping sometimes I didn't even wake up because I was just so distraught about everything. Yeah. But on the 30th morning, I woke up, being sort of fed up. I was sort of done with feeling like this, and just really wanted something to shift. So I just demanded something needs to shift, and it's going to happen right now, I had some experience with meditation, and I just thought sometimes good things happen
Yeah.
when you meditate. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna just sit down on the floor and sit there until things change. And that lasted for 3 hours. And I don't know if you've tried meditation, but after a while sitting down, you kind of need to move or do something, some activity or whatever it may be to kind of shake up.
Actually, I'm a Buddhist, so
Oh,
yeah, I'm doing meditation quite often. Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But thank you for sharing. Please do that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if you meditated for a long session, you sometimes need to just sort of, yeah, move a bit. And so I had already been in the habit of moving or walking, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna head to the ocean, and that took about a couple of hours. And when I went out there, it was June 7th, so the summer had sort of started, and it was warm and a nice day, quiet. And I stood there when I reached the shore, very calm shore, and all of a sudden there was this very vivid voice asking me, Gideon, why don't you walk from Denmark to Santiago? And it was very vivid. I looked around really like something was talking to me, and felt inspired. I smiled, and yeah, inspired for the first some time it was the first time I felt inspired for some time. And I was curious about it. And I was actually meeting my parents for lunch right near that shore, or there was a harbor lunch. And when I shared that with them, it was almost like the answer to the question arrived. So the answer to the question, are you gonna walk from Denmark to Santiago, arrived when I shared that with them. And they could see that in my face that I was radiant, I was smiling, it was exciting. And 2 weeks later, I began walking, having no idea why. I kind of just trusted this voice, this energy, and had a tremendous amount of faith in that guided energy that I felt. And of course, I am humble enough to know that there was something probably in my head talking to me or whatever it may be. But it was just so clear. And so, like somebody was actually talking to me. That
And
was
we
very,
also share with others that this also might be a part of it, at least. Listen to your inner self. It's so important to talk with yourself. It's healthy. Talking with yourself and listening to your inner voice. And
Mhm.
I'm not only talking about your voice from your head or from our head, which is our
Yeah.
conscious mind, which is the logic brain, right? So that's why I'm saying it's a healthy way that can actually help you out to go towards your main goal. It's a process. It's not that if you are don't do it, or if you do it either way you're going to solve all your problems. We are not
Mm.
talking about that. It's just a part of it. That's what I'm
Yes.
trying to say, Gideon, that it's nice also to share with others. That's why also one of the reasons that I have started this podcast is to share with people and give to people more information about depth and how, and offer them solutions, besides the information as such, but tangible ones that
Mhm.
they might actually use in their daily life,
Mhm.
mostly for those who business person that they have such a really busy schedule during the day. If you want it and if you need it, you just have to do it. Find the time to do those things that actually can give you wellness. Such it might be mental, might be spiritual, it might be emotional even. There is so much to talk about this.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this was, of course, a very strong epiphany, and as all epiphanies, if you follow a calling, it
Yeah,
doesn't avoid going through what you need to go through, right, to learn what you need to
exactly.
learn.
By the way, since you were talking, Gideon, about the ocean, before walking to the ocean, you sat in meditation for those 3 hours. In a world that demands immediate action when things go wrong, why was deep stillness your first strategic step?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure, honestly. I think I had done a meditation retreat, so that must have been a couple years before. I did the Vipassana meditation silent retreat for 10 days, where you're in silence for 10 days. So I think I sort of connected to the fact that I know meditation can make a big difference. And so, yeah, that was my go-to, I think, just for that instinctual sort of way to sort of start the process of shifting something. So, yeah.
When you reached the water,
Mhm.
as you just mentioned that you have heard this internal voice, beautiful internal voice, and you were willing to embrace it and listen to it, right? When you have heard why you walk from Denmark to Santiago, Gideon. Psychologically speaking, do you think that that voice as a sudden spiritual download, or do you think it was your subconscious finally breaking through external cognitive noise? Honestly.
Yeah, it's a good question. I Yeah, as we will go through this podcast, I think I'll probably get into the other times when I experienced this, what do you say, epiphanies or whatever. And I think a lot of the time when we have a really strong desire for something to change and shift, if we do it very intently and very clearly, my experience tells me that the universe will provide an answer, but it will happen in an unknown time. And I think that after you have a very clear intention and you do something with conviction, there's a chance that you're then also opening up to receiving whatever it may be. It's hard to know why that is or how it's happening. But that would be sort of my answer, I think, based on the experiences I've had. That because many times, yeah, I think I've been in the spiritual development space or personal development space for many years, and I think there's a tendency for people to wish of something to happen in a complete magical way, like out of
I
nowhere, like
agree. I
completely.
agree. Like law of
But
attraction as well.
yeah,
Most people they don't really know what is it and how
yeah,
it's working. It's
but
completely totally another
yeah,
thing that
but I
usually.
think there is a lot of intention behind when we are hit by whatever it may be. We are starting it more, and we are more involved than we actually give ourselves credit for, I think.
I agree.
And that would be probably my answer, that if you have intended something really clearly, and it can also be unconsciously, like if you're really frustrated about something for a while and you're just fed up, maybe that's enough to to just sort of share that frustration with the world or the universe, and perhaps that's why it's coming back, in terms of, yeah, a perceived answer or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's been my experience.
You packed up and started a 5 months journey across Europe just 2 weeks after this moment.
Mhm.
How did you manage the practical mind's natural instinct to overthink, delay, or
Mhm.
demand a flawless plan before taking the first step?
Yeah, good question. So I have actually had some experience before that in terms of long walks. I did my first long walk on the French Way of the Camino in 2014, and then I did another walk up from Lisbon up through Portugal up to Santiago as well. So I had the experience of walking long distance. So I was pretty comfortable that I could do it in that sense. I know what I needed to have with me practically. Of course, this is a much longer distance. It was during a very uncertain time. So I did add a tent to my backpack so I could use that along the way. Um, but and I tested setting that tent up and so on. Of course, I brought some practical things that I needed and whatnot. But I wasn't actually that very worried about that part of it. And the conviction I have had at that time when it came to, yeah, trusting the unknown and having faith in this guiding energy that I felt, made me very, what do you say, insular in my thinking. I didn't focus on anything else but trusting this voice and this energy. And I didn't think at all about restrictions and lockdowns or anything when it came to the world situation, because if people remember in 2020 or the time around that, it was a very uncertain time and things were a bit crazy and definitely in the unknown. And but for some reason I didn't think of it at all. I just trusted whatever I needed to trust, and yeah, and just got going. So that's hard one to answer in a analytical way, other than I just really trusted this energy. And sometimes when I talk to people about, our the difference between our head and our heart is that we seem to make decisions with our head, but if we follow our heart, we don't really need to make one. We just need to follow it.
I completely agree with you
Yeah.
100%, Gideon. Yeah. And it's a fact. Actually, also scientifically, recently have been shared some documentation that the heart itself has a mind itself, and
Yeah.
of course our brain another mind. But I mean, it's like they are completely two different things. They are connected, of course, and should be connected and pay attention, work on them separately, but also together.
And I think there's also just an understanding of that our heart has a magnetic field that is 5,000 times stronger than our brain or our head.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is the difference. And there's also neurons in our heart. So I think,
Exactly.
I mean, there is a reason why we in our society has been brought up to focus on the left analytical side, right? Because that's easier to control in some way, because we are very focused on knowledge and knowing things instead of being humble and actually being in the trusting this unknown giant universe we are, or energy universe we are part of. And I think that if we are sort of are humble enough to sort of saying, okay, I'm so small, there's something much bigger here that I'm a part of, we actually connect more to that sort of bigger realm than if we have this idea that we know, because we actually don't. I don't think anybody knows what's going on. I think we can have a connection to it. I think we can learn from it, but saying that we know limits us a lot more than we think, I think. So.
Taking this track in 2020, as you just have mentioned a second ago, meant walking through a world defined by isolation, closed borders as well, and collective fear too. How did this eerie quiet of lockdown Europe reshape your internal narrative and sense of belonging? Because I also talk a lot of belonging in my podcast episode is project. It is about that. The difference I'm trying to explain to people while they're living abroad, or might be an identity change, something in regards to that there is a huge difference between belonging and fitting in.
I think it goes together in some sense, because my personality up until my long walk and some time after, but the shift happened during the walk, which was I've been a very what do you say? I've been very going up against parents, the system, being sort of resisting everything that was sort of against me, or what I thought was against me in terms of control and whatever. And I think when I look back at the walk, I mean, there's obviously more reasons than one. I think when I look back at why I walked, I mean, I was in a big personal transition myself, but I also see that there was probably something calling me to kind of get rid of the bullshit that was going on in my head, where a lot of it was the resistance I had towards outside circumstances and so on. And I was very fortunate to walk during that time. I mean, I'm so grateful when I look back that I was able to walk through Europe during that time. First of all, because I think I would have gone completely crazy if I had not walked. And my resistance toward everything would have been increased a lot more. And walking helped me to sort of be in it in a different way and really be in movement most of the time. So I think that sort of helped me, and we can go into that in more depth in terms of the walk itself. But there was many times when I felt, when you walk on the Camino, and if you walked before, which I had, there's a belonging there, definitely. When you see the arrows towards Santiago and you feel like you're on the path, there is a feeling that you are a pilgrim that is, I mean, we are born free. We human beings should be more free. I think we're talking about freedom in a way that we understand it, and I think no one really understands what freedom really means, because we are not in essence free in our society. We can probably be and feel free on the inside.
Yeah.
But I think that what I experienced,
I think this is one of our struggles today in our society for most of people, to be honest. Sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to say that. Yeah. Because I do care very much as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that what I experienced was that even though I was alone a lot of the time, I felt I was connecting to the path. I was connecting to the towns that had signs and markers about the Camino for pilgrims. So even though I didn't talk to that many people other than when I arrived certain places, I felt like they were inviting me in, even though I was walking through a town for, 15, 30 minutes. When I saw the Camino markers and the pilgrim symbols and so on, I feel like I'm belong here on this path right now, and there's obviously a lot more people than me who understand that. And so I felt welcomed many times when I walked through villages that had very clear and big signs that basically said "Welcome to pilgrims." And so doing the whole walk, I definitely felt a belonging, that I belonged on that path. And yeah, so it was definitely a mix between feeling that I was letting go of some resistant part in me, along with
Patterns. Yeah.
yeah, along with feeling a belonging to the path I was literally on, but also toward. Um, I documented my whole trip on YouTube during when I was walking, and I'm actually reposting short bits right now. And I called the walk back then to my Camino toward a new life. So I already knew that this was a significant walk for me. I knew that I was heading towards something important and new, and so there was a lot of intuitive things going on as well. So yeah.
Well, Gideon, at this point, if you don't mind, please, I really have two crazy, crazy questions for you. One is
Yes.
quite personal, and is this one: how can a bad relationship bring you so much friction within, like in a spiritual way and mental way, emotionally, also, of course? How can that be possible? Because you have just told me that it was like 3 months relationship, but I mean, it's like, of course, you obviously you have cared so very much deeply. I suppose that it brought you to that point of isolation and friction and stress and emotional stress factors. But I just wonder how that happened, like
Yeah.
in that powerful way. I'm curious to understand what brought you to that point of, after 3 months, to feel to that corner of darkness, if you allow me,
Hmm.
please.
Sure.
Because it seems like actually you were in a dark place,
Yeah.
right, within yourself. Relationship actually brought you to a place where it was already inside you. It was like a trigger.
Yeah, that's is a really good question. And I think the answer came way after the walk, even way
Mm.
after the walk when I started writing the book I am publishing here soon. And the question is probably that I did not respect myself enough.
Mm.
I was stuck and frustrated because I didn't take enough responsibility for the things I needed to take responsibility for. And I think the answer to the question is one of the 8 conclusions, or one of the 8 insights I have actually in the back of my book. Instead of calling it an epilogue, I call it reflections, where I list 8 things that I sort of focus on in terms of how I define my experience of the walk, and also define the experience, or the title that I of my book, The Pilgrim Spirit, which is sort of the red thread throughout the book. And the first point in of the 8 is respect yourself. If we don't respect ourselves, we actually are not capable, probably, of the many other virtues that are important in our
Absolutely.
life. So,
Absolutely.
and what's interesting about respecting yourself is that that's what when you set up boundaries of what is okay for you, for yourself, but also for
Exactly.
others. And if we
Exactly.
don't have those boundaries, we first of all we are not, if we don't have the boundary, we do not know why we are frustrated by other people when they cross our,
Yeah, because they trigger us. So
yes, but we
that
have not
trigger
set a
is within
boundary.
you.
Yeah, we have not set a boundary, so we have actually
Exactly.
not been responsible enough to tell them, say, this is not okay and this is
Exactly.
okay. And then they don't know where the boundary is, so then they cross it all the
Exactly.
time, and we are frustrated because we don't know why the friction is happening. And it's a very, very important concept, especially within close
Absolutely.
relationships. And
Yes, definitely.
interestingly enough, that's a story I would like to share. But um, the partner I have now, my focus was, in the beginning of our relationship, was to set up very clear. It was very clear, very important for me to say, this is not okay. This is okay, because that made her see, okay, this is, first of all, it made her respect me a lot more, because there's a very snippet of fear when we respect each other, right? There's a fear of not wanting to cross in on the other's boundary. And when that has been clear, it's much easier to be sort of close together and communicate and so on. And so that was my biggest lesson, I think, when it came to relationships, to really set clear boundaries, and at least talk about them. And so that, because otherwise we teach other people to behave in a way we actually don't want them to behave. But but we are responsible for a lot of that if we're not clear of what the boundary is. So I think that's the answer to that question in terms of relationships, and so on. And at that time, because I was so frustrated by that, and I probably didn't know what I was frustrated about until I really dived into it in the writing, because that was the longest therapeutic experience, obviously, based on the walk, was when I really began to dissect why I had been the way I had been. And first, then in the writing process, begin to take responsibility for it and many other things. And that's when my writing mentor sort of gave me feedback on that if we don't, and basically the last line in that part of respecting yourself is that all the other virtues, if you're not respecting yourself, the other virtues that we are aspiring to live by or whatever, they cannot actually be possible, because if we don't have that foundation set. Yeah.
Yes,
So that was a very key to actually understanding and to actually feel some kind of personal foundation within myself, and actually take the very important responsibility. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's anti-intuitive, but it's definitely not something I had thought of enough, that was important. And so that cleared a lot of things up for me, in terms of.
Been talking so very often about these two keywords: self-respect, this is one, and self-communication, but also communication. When you have these two elements, is the foundation of your house. You are a house, right? So you have to
Yes.
build on top layers and layers of values, what is
Yes.
valuable for you, your boundaries, and so many others, etc., elements that builds that house, right? Which is yourself. And these two key elements are so fundamental for your identity, your personality, personal reality. Should make like a series of podcasts about this, about
Yeah.
identity in general, and how to build the identity, and
Mhm.
how to avoid certain patterns, etc. And
Yes.
self-communication is so important. I will not get like tired of repeating this, because they are so important. You can live without them, but you will not have that depth and knowledge about yourself in order for you to build something else on top of it. It's like the cherry on top of the cake, you know. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you have to become a professional in communication, but still be able to understand how to better communicate with others.
One of the reasons why is that it takes courage, because
Absolutely.
there's
Thank you.
a chance that you can lose someone, right? There's a chance that you can lose someone if you put yourself in a situation where you say, this is not acceptable for me. But it's another also, first of all, it kind of protects yourself and your own energy in some aspect, and you take responsibility. But it also makes you, from that point, also makes you more unable to be a victim of whatever it is that's going on inside. And I think that's one of the keys, is that
Yes.
if we're not setting up boundaries in some fundamental way, we will also very quickly feel that we are a victim of everything that's going on outside of us. And we need to take responsibility. I mean, I've said this over and over to my partner. We've talked about this over and over, about that we need to understand that we are responsible for what we think, for what we feel, and what we do. And we are not taught that. We are taught that we need to react to everything that's going on outside and inside. And that means that we are blaming other people for how we react and how we respond to things. And that's a fundamental error when it comes to our human behavior. And we all, I'm still doing it. I'm still reacting. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm just aware enough to know that that is my responsibility. And it's a big difference between just behaving and continue to growth, because if you don't have that foundation down in terms of at least being aware of that, you will continue to be in a fictional place, in relationships and
Constantly.
with anything that's going
It's a
on, really.
pain, like constant pain, like literally, absolutely.
And you'll blame the world for not achieving the things you
Yeah.
do or want to do because he's better than me or she's better than me. No, you just need to.
You become blind. You are
Yeah.
blind, literally. You cannot analyze in the right way because you are completely blind. Because you are completely obsessed of your patterns that you have been living for so long. That's you have to break that chain of patterns. That's the whole thing. You become something that you have never ever thought or that you will become, like in that way.
It definitely sets up the foundation for your potential to unfold,
Exactly.
right? And that's what we want. We want that foundation down so we can begin to move into the direction where we want to go. And that is basically the journey I've been on the last 6 years, to understand that, to kind of feel and experience the shift of the walk, and then go into the establishing that foundation through the writing, which is how it happened, basically. Yeah.
You have also mentioned something about personal vibration and energy, right? Because I also believe everything is energy, like literally everything. This is a fact, by the way. It's not just because I'm saying it. It's a fact, scientifically and proved. And for example, I always, and I mean constantly, even though I do what I do, the job that I do, constantly pay attention who is around me, with whom I'm interacting to. Constantly, I have this priority for myself. It's a boundary, as it's just mentioned,
Yes.
but it's such an important thing because it doesn't take me anything. It actually gives me much more than anything at all. And even my friends, even nowadays, they don't completely understand it, but it's okay because they don't have to. It's something that I want to protect and I'm willing to protect. Epigenetics also, in that sense, it's connected to that. But still, even though you are conscious or unconscious, you can, that process of energy, change of energy, it's still in place. That's what I'm saying. And I'm paying attention because I want to protect it. For me, it's so important because I can feel the energy of other people, including the body language, of course, because it's also part of my job. The second question of mine that I was mentioning earlier is this: I'm curious, what is your relationship with religion? Religion is it's a thing, and being a spiritual person is another thing.
Yeah, so my parents come from a very religious background. Part of the resistant behavior probably I've had is that I was never really seen for who I am by my dad's parents. And we lived very close to them the first 5 years of my life before we moved from Copenhagen to the middle of the country. And that has affected me more than I probably realized until my later 30s. And that was a very rigid religion. Everything was right and wrong, black and white. They wanted to convince me and everybody else to believe the way they believed and live the way they lived. And so that meant that they never really saw me for who I was. They were not really interested in me. They never asked interesting, curiosity questions about my life and wanting the best for me in that way. And while they did it with good intentions, at least from their view, of course, it lands a bit differently when you don't really feel seen as a kid. And so I was had a very resistant behavior based on that. So of course, also with religion, but I also found out later in life that that type of religion was not really normal in some sense, because I've met a lot of Christians that are just the most amazing people in the world, and they're just so nice and down to earth, and just are completely kind and compassionate and giving towards other people. And I'm not saying that they weren't my grandparents, but it was just a very different energy. And so I think based on that kind of negative, influence or initial understanding of what religion was probably an illusion to what it probably was, or at least the one that I was brought up with when it came to that. So um, I'm not sure if that connected me to the spiritual part of things, but it probably moved me into a different direction when it came to just looking at life or asking questions and being. I was very, I would say, curious, but also very sort of, I had a hunger for. I mean, I would always ask questions when I was 4 or 5 years old. I asked my dad, "Why are we going to church? This is for adults." And so at a very early age, I was very sort of wondering about why are we doing the things we are, and I don't really know where that comes from. So that's hard for me to really answer. But I definitely had a interest in knowing why things were the way they were, from a religious standpoint, from a societal standpoint, from any standpoint, really. Maybe to the point where I was maybe a little bit obsessed about asking questions about everything. Um, and so I probably, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. The spiritual path probably started when I started traveling. I would say more so, at least
The
in the
same for me. Isn't it
yeah,
odd, like quoting odd in that sense? So
yeah.
probably
I
because
mean,
you are more open towards everything and nothing. If you think about
yeah,
it, it's a metaphor. But I'm just saying, because I've been reflecting upon this so many times. I've been traveling not only in Denmark, because I live in Denmark, but in so many other countries. But since, as you just mentioned a second ago, I have actually started this process of just traveling, knowing myself
mhm,
first by traveling,
mhm,
and then knowing other people, cultures, other type of
yes,
values, personalities, etc. So many other things,
yeah,
different lives styles,
yes,
and as such, it completely shifted my mindset and my ways, and shifted everything within me.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you have to be willing to be open towards those
mhm,
processes and
yeah,
change as such, because again, as I mentioned also in other podcast episodes, change is the only constant in our lives, right?
mhm,
Besides death.
mhm,
I mean, it's something wonderful. It's powerful. It's scary as well, of course,
mhm,
but it should be more courageous than afraid of change as such, because
yeah,
change can bring you so much joy,
yeah,
so much purity in you within
yeah,
your life, because it's about pure reality, and
yeah,
reality, it's also subjective as such in
mhm,
base of the subject, as
yeah,
base of the individual, but you have to find your own. That's what I
yeah,
wanted to say. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I mean, I can mention that the way that started for me was I was at a that was before I started traveling, a bit more than a year before. I was at an event where a speaker was, personal development stuff. He was talking about things, and the Monday after, I sat down at work, and just everything just shifted. I could hear what people were thinking literally before they said it. It was very strange. And from that point on, and the next year plus, I began to read and, first of all, order a bunch of books and then read a bunch of books, and starting that sort of spiritual path where I was like really connecting with there's something more to my life. There's more to life. My boss at the time was already on that path in some way, in terms of looking at possibilities, entrepreneurial possibilities, and we connected strongly on things. And on that day, he told me just go home and write things down, and come back when you're ready. And that was very important for me because it made me sort of feel trust in him, but also that he could see that I was going through something that was important. And the next year was sort of a slow process in sort of getting ready for that leap of faith, which happened in 2000, early 2010, when but I lost a bunch of money in the late in the end of the year 2009, and a couple of days later, in early 2010, I just had this feeling that, okay, I need to go travel. I need to go out there and renew myself and live differently. That was how I put it, and began traveling and never really stopped. And yeah, and it's interesting with traveling because it's not just about seeing places and experiencing new cultures. It's also about putting yourself into a new situation and
Absolutely.
challenging yourself, and actually get accustomed to this idea that you need to actually begin to trust in something much more profound than yourself, or whatever it may be.
Yes, definitely.
You need to begin to trust in the unknown, and you need to really just
Exactly.
be convinced that things will work out, right? Because
Yeah.
when you're backpacking, or you find yourself in very strange situations sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. True. True.
all you can really
True.
believe in is that higher power, or whatever it may be, that okay, this
Yeah.
will work out, this will be fine. um, and be in this positive pressure where you are forced to figure it out.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's a
Exactly.
very important skill, I think.
It is simple as it is, but powerful
Yeah,
as it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, Gideon, you have pushed your body through grilling physical tests like marathon, for example. When physical exhaustion and pain set in on a long solitary track, like what mental frameworks do you use to stop the mind from entering a panic or threat response?
yeah. I actually like being in that situation for some
Me
reason.
too.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I like feeling the pressure of being completely where you are and dealing with yourself in that way. In the last day in Germany on the long walk, I was at a point where I felt really good physically. I felt really good conditioning. It has been 49 days, so I had walked for a long time up until that point. So I felt really good and strong, and I felt ready to really test myself. And so between Düsseldorf and Aachen, there was about 100 kilometers, and I was looking at. It was a Sunday, so I wanted to walk as far as I could on that day. And I saw that there was a path around an area, which was the actual Camino path that I was following, but I couldn't really see any accommodation options. And I saw that there was a place that you can walk through there, but it was sort of an unknown place. There wasn't anything showing what was going on there on the map. And after about 3 hours of walking that day, I was like, okay, I'm ready to really test myself now. And I booked a hostel in Aachen for 2 days, meaning that I had to arrive that morning, so Monday morning. So that was my first of the 2 nights or 2 days that would start. And but that was 60 some kilometers left on that day. I walked for 3 hours, and I had about 68 kilometers left that day. So I decided to say, I'm going to test myself now. I'm going to book these hostels, and there's no what do you say, no point of return or whatever. So I decided to walk, and that meant I walked through the night. I took a long break before that started, but between 10 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning, I walked through the night. And obviously, if you have walked already 40 some kilometers, and you have to walk through the night 40 plus kilometers more, and you are not sleeping, you obviously feel fatigued and challenged and whatnot. And of course, I walked slower and slower, and it was really tough. But it was an interesting experience, because when you are in a challenging physical experience, all you can really focus on is where you are. And I knew intuitively that the more challenging it is, the more I will learn right now when it's happening. And not only was I testing myself physically, I was also preparing in some way, because it was an uncertain time. I had no idea if restrictions would come again. And so I was like, well, if they're going to close borders, or if they're going to close certain paths, I need to be ready to walk far. So that was partly also why I was walking almost about 2 marathons in a day between Düsseldorf and Aachen. So I'm not sure what the answer is, other than I kind of like being in that place, challenging myself, and because I know that there's so much learning there. And so
In a way, this walk also connected you somehow with your favorite author, right? Who became actually your writing mentor.
So-
Is it true, right?
Yeah, so that story goes back to starting in 2018, where I was in Denmark at the time and was sort of maybe in a stuck phase again, where I didn't really know what was gonna happen. So I wrote down this long list of, you could call it a bucket list. I didn't really call it that, but it's sort of a list of things I wanted to learn, to experience, places I wanted to see, and just all these things. And that's actually a really good exercise, by the way. If anybody is listening to this and they say, I'm feel stuck, or I don't know what I want to do in life, make a list of 100 things that really is important to you in terms of what you would like to learn, things you want to see, learn, achieve, people you want to meet, countries you want to experience, languages you want to learn to speak, whatever it may be, because it will give you you will connect with what really is valuable to you and what really matters to you. And so on my list, one of the things I really wanted, which was at the top of the list, was to meet my favorite author. He had really spoken to me through his work of the 2 books that he had written at the time, and I had watched and found everything I could about him online. The problem was he was no longer in public life. So that meant, even though I had a great desire to meet him, it was actually not possible to even connect with him. But as I do in my life, I just focus on what it is that I want, and then throw it out there. And 2 years would pass, a year and a half maybe, or whatever, when I started walking. the long walk through Europe. And sometimes I look for him online, see would he get back online and so on. And for some reason, he had started to get back online at that time. He started to upload music onto one of the social platforms. And so I started to follow him. And within a month after that, his assistant wrote me on LinkedIn saying thank you, which was obviously a surprise because I had no idea how she found me or whatever. But I was grateful because I obviously knew that that meant I was a big step closer. And so I shared with her that I was documenting this trip, or about what I was doing, and she must have shared that with him, because when I finished the walk, I stayed in touch with her, and I talked to her once or twice, and she had shared that with him, and then I found out that he wanted to talk to me about what I was doing, and so after the walk, I applied for a grant through his foundation as an artist or as a writer because I wanted to write a book about my
Yeah,
experience
by
of
the
the
way,
long
your
walk.
book will be out on this June on 22nd. Is
June
that true?
22nd, it's out. Yes.
Mhm.
And so we started a collaboration where I started writing my book in the beginning of 2022, sorry, and he looked through my work, and then we talk every 2 weeks, when I had more to share and so on. And then it became once every 2 weeks, or 2 times every 2 weeks, and twice every week, and so on when we talked. And he went through my book line by line with me, and we edited everything. And if anybody has been reading books, or already have read this one, the book is called Shantaram. His name is Gregory David Roberts, and it's a very big book, but an amazing, amazing book about his true experiences escaping prison in Australia and becoming part of the slum in India and the mafia in India and a drug smuggler, and was in a war in Afghanistan and in Sri Lanka, and just a crazy, crazy life, being tortured in prisons in India and whatnot. I mean, it's just beyond what you can almost understand that somebody went through. But he put his real experiences into this book, his novel Shantaram, in a fictional, where a lot of fictional characters were going on. But he was my favorite author. I am so fortunate that he has endorsed my book, and has been with me through this long journey. So kudos to him, and I'm so grateful and honored that he has been with me on this journey. So an amazing guy, and I just love him. So
Yeah, wonderful. Now I have a more personal question for you, Gideon. You and me, we have talked, but also you have shared earlier at the beginning of this podcast that you, 3 years after your walk, you have found your love of your life, right?
yes.
Do you believe that this type of radical identity alignment becomes internally true to your own path, as we have talked earlier, is a prerequisite for attracting genuine, high trusted relationship?
The way I would probably answer that is that I would go back to how it happened, because it's very much related to how the long walk happened. I, as many others, have done a lot of online dating, and probably to the extreme of it being too much and on the very superficial side, with one night stands and whatever else. And yeah, I've done too much of that. And I came back to Finisterre in 2023 in October because I wanted to finish my book there. It was where everything finished, and it's just a very special place to me. If people don't know where that is, it's the very end of the Camino, on the French way of the Camino, or after Santiago, if you continue toward the coast. Finisterre means in Latin Finistade, or is Finistade, and means end of the earth. And it's just a very special place where after the town, there's 2.5 kilometers out to the lighthouse and the 0.0 marker, where when you get out there, you realize that there's no more to do, no more places to walk. It's finished, you're done, and you can bring back what you have learned with you back to town and to your life again. So when I came back in October to finish my book, I decided with myself that I wanted to go out there every morning to touch the 0.0 marker and do that for the rest of the year as a sort of a disciplined way of doing something. And so, of course, actually, I should probably start with saying, before I did that, I had decided for myself, I want to meet the one I want to be with in real life. I don't want to do any more online dating. I'm deleting the apps. I'm done with it. I don't think it's good for anybody, and I actually still do. I don't think it's a good way to interact. I think it's a very superficial. It can be used, of course, if you have the right intentions. Of course, it can be used in a positive way. But for me, I was just finished. I didn't want to do it. I didn't see the value in it anymore, and I wanted to meet somebody in real life. So, along with that, I set this goal. I wanted to go out and touch this 0.0 marker rock every morning. But of course, after 5 days, I got up a little late. I didn't do the reading I was supposed to do that morning, and whatever. And oh well, I wanted to get out there anyway. So later that day, early noon probably, I headed out there again. And when I got closer, the last marker has 356 meters left or whatever. Around then, I saw two pairs of people walking. They came down from a side road, and I saw them ahead of me. I passed the first pair, a man and a woman, and I then continued on and to the other pair. The man was on the left side of her. The woman was on his right side. And I sort of had my pace and walked faster. And when I was about to pass him on his left shoulder, I looked sort of behind his back there and saw two eyes and a beautiful smile just connecting with mine. And I had no idea how that happened. It was just instant, right? And I still passed them, but instinctively, I felt like something something happened there. It was very clear. So I sort of slowed my step a bit, and as everybody does when they get to the 0.0 marker, they want their photos taken. So I helped them with that, and it was obvious that something was happening between her and me in the way we were sort of at least behaving. The other three kept going after the pictures were taken to see the lighthouse and see everything else, and I just said to her, I'm going to be in the spa reading. If you're interested, I'm in here and would love to talk to you or catch up. She continued with the group there, and I went in to read. And that was very, very interesting. I sat in there, and my heart was just completely connected to her, I felt. And she was not there. It was almost like she was sitting in front of me, but I couldn't see her. Very strange. And sort of, I was just sort of wondering. I was reading the book, and yeah, I didn't really understand other than I could just feel like she was there, but I
You were
couldn't see her.
connected. Yeah.
Yes. So after an hour of her not showing up, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just delusional here. I'm gonna head back or whatever. So I went out and started to walk back on the path there toward the souvenir shop later, or up the path, and not knowing that in that moment she had told her friends, okay, I'm gonna go down and meet my future husband. She said,
No
way.
and seriously.
And in that moment when I had probably walked on the path towards the souvenir shop, I looked back a couple of times to sort of just see if she was still there, because I could still feel like I don't understand why she's not there. So then all of a sudden I saw this red jacket doing jumping jacks and trying to get my attention, and then I walked back and we connected. There was a beautiful rainbow. It was a beautiful sunny day, and we went back into the bar and just talked. For me, not realizing she's from Eastern Europe, and I didn't understand that she didn't understand half of what I was saying, basically. And she kept a really nice. She was very good at making me believe that she understood everything. So I just talked my ear off about the Camino and pilgrimage and all my excitement about that. But interestingly enough, I met her and her group later that evening, and we've been connected ever since, been very special. So I think to answer your question, it was very instant. And it was a month later, I went to her place, and we kind of skipped all the dating and more or less started living together in some way, even though I'm traveling a lot and I don't have a completely concrete, what you say, a permanent base. But we connected in a very special way, and trusted what happened very similarly to the the voice at the ocean when I started walking, that this was something I needed to really just trust. And
Trust what you feel in that sense,
yeah.
because we were talking about the difference between the heart as a brain and the
Mhm.
brain as such as a brain.
Mhm.
How
Yeah.
it is that what you feel actually it's so much more important, that not less important the brain
Yeah.
as it is, but much powerful than the
Yeah.
brain itself. So we all should learn or relearn to listen actually what we feel and how we feel, and then
Yeah.
analyze it and try to understand. Give yourself time to understand. It's not that it's a process within this process it happens from one day to another. It doesn't work like that, but you
Yeah.
have to learn to be unfortunately or not, it is how it is. You have
Yeah.
to learn how to be patient with yourself,
Yes.
not only about towards others, but mostly with yourself, to try to understand in your way, with your timeline, what actually it's about, and then
Yeah.
break those patterns, the chain of patterns that actually it was just related and connected to your survival until that point. From
Yeah.
that point to further, then it's not anymore about survival, but it's staying truth within yourself and with yourself. That's the whole
Yeah.
point. Yeah,
I
definitely.
think there's we talked about self-respect before, and we talked about
Yeah.
also being very clear on what you want. And I think in terms of answering the actual question that you answered, in terms of how do we find the one we want to be with, well, it's hard to answer that really, but I think it starts
Yeah,
with a
definitely.
very clear intention, a very clear desire of what it is that you want. It's very important to, I mean, if we speak to the universe that has all the possibilities, all the endless possibilities, we also need to make it very clear on what it is that we want, I think.
Yeah.
That's
The
what I've
universe
learned.
doesn't know the difference between negative and positive.
Yeah.
Negative or positive for him, it doesn't exist that
Yeah.
way.
Talk much about this because I've for whatever reason, but people talk a lot about, or at least in the past when I started to study all these things, everybody was talking about the law of attraction and all this
Yeah,
stuff, and then
yeah.
sort of
Yeah, it
two of but it's also misunderstood.
yeah, I
The law of
agree.
attraction made you or many millions of people believe that you can just say whatever you want and then
Yeah, exactly.
you'll get it. But
Exactly.
the real law, or whatever the real what do you say, the state you need to be in is the law of vibration. You need to be in a
Yes,
state where you actually you're making yourself able to attract what it is that you
exactly.
want.
Exactly.
And that's
This
what
is a huge
and that's
difference. Thank you, Gideon.
yeah, huge difference. And that's what starts with a clear intention. What is it that you
Exactly.
actually want? And that's also why I would suggest that if people are not getting their results or getting what they actually want, start with a list of things that are important to you. What do you want to learn? What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Where do you want to, what countries do you want to experience? What do you want to achieve? What kind of partner do you want to have? All these different aspects of your life. And that will take some work. But the outcome is most likely that you will connect to what actually is important to you. And that is also another question which was happening a lot during the pandemic time, right? People were forced to ask themselves, because they were so cramped into their country or their village or whatever, or town, to ask themselves, what is actually important to me? What is important to me? And if we start there, I think that we have a greater chance of attracting things that we would, that is on in the vibrational, yeah,
Line. Yeah.
line of what who we are, yeah.
By the way, let's also go towards something related to more professional part of it. Usually, high performance often use metrics, goals, and speed to measure their worth. Based on your journey, what is the core illusion of chasing external milestones without the internal anchor points?
Well, mine has probably been to always wanting to fill the gap of being good enough. That's been my sort of core wound of not being and feeling good enough. And I think those core wounds will kind of be with us to some degree. I think we can get better at letting go of the emotional wound of it, perhaps. But I think that there's if we try to achieve things with our ego, we will always get disappointed. I think, and we need to that's why we need to try and connect with what's important to us. I think the struggle and the challenge in our life is to kind of find out if, at least if we have not been in an environment that is supportive of or have an awareness of supporting us in our endeavor when we are in sort of an ignorant and an innocent state of being a child. Um, it may take some time to find your path and to really connect with what it is that you want, but that's maybe also another reason to do this list. But it also takes some courage to go out there and try some things out, right? Test yourself in a physical, mental, and spiritual arenas. And it took me many years before I sort of connected with the values I guess I have now and what it is that's important to me. But
By the
yeah,
way, same here, more than
yeah,
20 years. It's an inner work that never finished.
yeah,
It's
never
work in
finished.
progress constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to
But
confirm
it's
that.
it's a hard question to answer because I think our lives are so unique.
Yes,
Everybody's life is so
true.
unique. But obviously, there's a big difference between pursuing something out of the ego rather than
Yes,
pursuing something
definitely. Thank
that's
you.
connected to the heart in some
Yes,
way, right? So,
yes, yes, yes,
um,
yes.
so I think that's also why my writing mentor actually wanted to work with me because I had the intention of that this book, the intention for my book is not for me, it's for other people. That was my
Mhm.
intention because I think it's important to the story in my book is not so important, or the character who is me is not so important. What is important is the idea of listening to what's important inside, right?
Mhm.
And we can go down many wrong paths if we focus on materialistic and egotistical things, and that's what our society teaches us most of the time.
Mhm.
And if we begin
True.
to really focus on listening to our heart and to these very not basic but very special, beautiful principles of the spiritual
Mhm.
faith, surrender, trusting the unknown, and yeah, being humble. Many of these spiritual principles. When we begin to connect with those, we will allow our ego to support the spiritual rather than be in the control of the other. Right?
Usually writers and builders, very often they hit this wall of creating block, right? Or
Mhm.
profound self-doubt. Very, very often, actually. What is your personal protocol for sitting with your creative tension without letting it degrade your vision?
Yeah, good question.
I think
It,
it's so important, so powerful because it's always, almost always there, That's why I'm asking.
if we take the aspect of writing, I if somebody asked me, Gideon, are you a writer? Well, I would probably say yes, but I'm not a writer that writes every single day. I'm not sitting down and writing 2 or 3 hours a day. I need to. Sometimes I'm sort of making slow decisions. The next book I'm going to write is going to be something about the time after my long walk and a lot of the things that happened after the walk because that's not in the book
Mhm.
that I'm publishing now. And one of the ways that I found out that really works for me was, well, you need to write at a certain time every single day. And I wrote at 9 o'clock every morning, and then I wrote until I couldn't write anymore, which was usually 3 to 4 hours. And then maybe I wrote a bit more in the evening. Um, and of course, that was also because I was ready. It actually took me more than a year before I started to write. It took some time before it all settled in me. And that's how I am writing. I'm writing based on if things have settled in me, then I'm ready to sort of express it. But I think there's truth to the fact that some people need to maybe not force themselves to begin to poke in the hole of the creative process. But of course, if you are doing creative work every day, you will of course connect with that more on a continuous basis.
True, true.
And so I think that sometimes you need to there's a book called The War of Art, or it's a matter of doing some work every single day to to really kind of connect to that to the creative space that we want to connect to. And it does take repetition. It does take some where you some discipline to actually do the work to
Absolutely.
poke in the hole of that creative process. So even though I think I know myself well enough now that I need to just sort of slowly connect to the bigger outcome of the project I want to create, And then I make a slow process of sort of making myself ready for that as things settle. And then when I begin, then I make it a practice, a daily disciplined thing where I write every day. I definitely have more experience now based on this book because it's my first real book.
Yeah.
So I understand more of structure and so on. But I think initially, in terms of writing anything, if anybody's interested in writing, it's a matter of just getting it down. I mean, the first draft, as Hemingway said, is always, you know. So be okay with just getting it down. That's the most important thing. Then you can begin to edit. That's when the writing really starts. So when you're inspired, get it down. Just write it down, and then you begin to work on it, edit, rewrite, and so on.
Yeah. I also have another question. As you have just mentioned also earlier, you have done this deep dive meditation retreats, right? But how do you integrate that intense spiritual stamina into your ordinary fast-paced daily life without needing to flee to a mountain top or to another country, for example?
Yeah, I mean, if your question is about your daily practice,
Yeah,
I definitely I could improve there when it comes to a daily meditation practice. But I like to listening to some calm music and calm daily or before as I go to sleep. So I'm trying to do something a little bit every day in terms of a short walk or something of that nature. When it comes to a meditation retreat or walking, or a long distance walk, it obviously takes a lot of time out of your calendar, and that is the biggest thing. I mean, do you have the time to actually commit to such an extended period of time where you're devoting yourself to a spiritual experience as a 10-day meditation retreat or a long walk of weeks and months? And that's up to the individual, I think. But my subtitle in the on my book is "The longer you walk, the deeper you go." The subtitle is "The longer you walk, the deeper you go," and the reason for that is not only on a long walk, but the more you do things, the deeper you go, I think. And that also means that if I just may share my experiences between a meditation retreat and a long walk, I think if you haven't done much meditation, I would probably recommend going on a long walk because doing a long meditation retreat is very hard. It's very hard. And it can also, there's a chance if you're not experienced, and of course, if it's Vipassana, there are guidance and guides there that can support you. But if you don't have much experience, I think it can also be a little, there's a possibility that can actually go the other way, that you have a negative experience and will be a little scared of meditation because it's so much in your face. So if you don't have the experience of meditation and so on, I would probably recommend a long walk, because that when you are on a long walk, you are moving your body all the time, and you will actually go through very similar things on a long walk. But because you are in the movement and walking every day, you will have an easier time coping and going through the traumatic experiences that will come through you. I talk about the three phases of the Camino in the book, and something I like talking about, which consists of the physical, mental, and spiritual phases, where the physical is the initial phase where you're excited and you're trying something new, and it takes some time before you really get into the depth of an experience. And then the mental phase is where you go next, where you are, after the physical, are opening more up to the deeper sense of yourself, the trauma, the darkness, the negativity, the burdens, the challenging experiences you've been through, either unconsciously as a kid or consciously as a young adult or an adult, where on a walk, those things are being released slowly. So that can make you feel that you're crying and frustrated and angry and all these things. And because you are walking, you're literally walking through it as you are walking through it. And that is a giant difference when it comes between that and a meditation retreat, because you are moving, you keep your body moving through it. And when you have gone through those very intense experiences of the negativity and trauma and the heavy energies, and actually feeling that they're being let go on a walk, you are feeling much more confident, because a long walk and the change and the shift and the transformation in a long walk goes very, very slow. But the beauty of that is that it stays with you. The experience of the letting go stays with you. The gaining of what you actually don't even know you needed, that you get from a long walk,
and then becomes more familiar, and therefore that's why also it's more easier in that
It's being,
sense.
it's being ingrained slowly, which means that it sticks with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I had a friend who walked a few years ago. Actually, was in Finisterre when he arrived in October 2023, and he talked long after that. It's like I'm thinking about the walk all the time. It's with me. You know, it's like it's growing within me, and that's what many people experience. And when you have gone through the mental phase of the Camino or life, the spiritual phase starts where you're feeling more connected to yourself. You feel more in the flow of the walk or playing the guitar or whatever it may be in the meditation, right? Because you have done it long enough for the release of what it is that you don't need any longer.
Exactly.
And so when you connect with that, and also after you have done a certain spiritual experience for a longer period of time, after that you feel it's more connected to you, it's ingrained in you more.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
and that's why I think a long walk is so beautiful, because it's a very human aspect of who we are. It's a very organic pace. It's a very natural pace, and the way things are happening are just it's just very normal, natural, and that's I think why the walking far is so makes such a significant shift and change in people. Yeah.
By the way, then for a high achiever listening today to this podcast episode in particular, Gideon, who might feel like completely stuck in a loop,
Yes.
of corporate burnout or existential frustration right now, what is the first internal part of them that they would have to touch today right away? What will be the first thing?
To make the shift or to make a change.
Yes.
Um,
To change
yeah,
something
yeah.
towards change.
Quick fixes these days, right?
Yeah, no, it's not about that. That's the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously it's a subjective thing for me in terms of sharing this. But I would, because I have tried many different spiritual experiences. I've traveled for 16 years. I tried to find my path, reading books, writing, going to personal development events with, authors and speakers and you name it. I've tried a lot of different things, but long distance walking has given me more than anything else, and it's not even close to a comparison to how much it has given me in comparison to many other spiritual experiences. And so, two things I would recommend: make a list. Make a list of the things that I mentioned before, to kind of give yourself a foundation for what is actually important to me. What I might want to pursue in life that's more in quote more important than what I'm doing now. If I feel stuck and don't feel my life is moving, what what can I do to get that sort of that energy moving and connected to something that is valuable to me? And I think that will take some work, but I think it will get you moving. I think it will connect you to something that's important to you, and connect you to what more of what it is that you're looking for or want. And then, of course, not everybody necessarily need to go on a long walk, of course.
Yeah.
But I would highly, highly recommend doing that. It doesn't have to be the Camino. It doesn't have to. You can do any long walk you want. There are Pilgrim paths most countries in the world. There is the long Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail in the U.S. There is different trails toward Assisi in Norway. In France, there are many paths. A lot of paths, of course, goes towards Santiago. So if you want to go towards Santiago, you can start from anywhere in Europe, anywhere in France, anywhere in Spain, and so. But what I would recommend is also, and that's maybe a little bit of an offer here, is that one of the things I would like to do is I would like to support people in really changing their life through a long walk, because I just see and feel and know, based on the experiences and many people I've met who have done long walks, it really changes your life. I walked with my partner last year, and I said to her before we left, when you come back to this dining room table, your life will be different. And it was different, and her life has shifted more to going to a more deeper place than she has been before. And so I know it works. So one of the things I'm looking to do is to create a journal or some sort of tool where we work on first what to focus on before the walk, questions, intentions, and these things.
And compare them after the work or something
And then
like that?
and then we walk and then we work together, or I'm there as a guide on the side during the walk. And then I'm gonna be there after the walk, because just because you walk for 3-4 weeks or a few months or whatever, when you're finished the walk is not finished. you are first really starting your life, and it's very
Mhm.
important to kind of take some time to reflect on that. So I would
Reflect,
definitely
but
recommend that
obviously
walk.
you also need guidance because, as you just said earlier, Gideon, right? So,
Yeah, it
uh,
helps. It definitely
yeah,
helps. And
yeah,
when we are out on a long walk and we experience this very traumatic feelings and so on,
that's why,
we sometimes really
exactly.
need to call a friend, and
Hmm.
that was true for me
Hmm.
as well. So
Exactly. That's why I'm saying that. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Precisely. So, Gideon, as we have mentioned and talked about it earlier, your upcoming book, it's almost out on 22nd of June this year. What is the primary shift in consciousness you would like people to experience regarding their own potential for radical change?
There's a lot of focusing on the journey and not the destination. And what's of course important,
Thank you.
of course, it's important to realize that it's important to who you become along the way. And it's also important to realize that while destination and the journey is maybe the destination as the cliche is, I think it's important to realize that things have to end. We have to end things. Even though we like a nice train ride through Europe, it's good that it doesn't continue for like 20 years, right?
Mhm.
We need things to end to try new things. But I think the most important thing in terms of the journey of that I experienced myself, but also the book, The Pilgrim Spirit, is that first of all, you don't need to walk to get a sense of what it's like to walk, but it's important no matter what you do, that you what's important is that who you become along the way. That's what's important. And being practicing the principles, I think, of the Pilgrim Spirit, which many are included in the back of the book, which one of them is, respect yourself, faith in your future, surrender. And one of the most important ones for me has been humility. I come from a very judgmental family, I think, my grandparents especially. And I'm very judgmental in the way I perceive the world because it's just so ingrained in me that whatever I'm doing, I just judge. So going through this book,
That's
writing this
totally
book
important.
gave me, my writing mentor said very early on, he said, Gideon, you need to write with humility. That's what he said. And if you read the book Shantaram, you will see that he wrote that book with humility, even though that it was fear, there was tons of violence in there and tons of war and many different sort of dark or
Scenarios.
negative
Yeah.
experiences or scenarios. That humility is the foundation for his book. And of course, he sees humility as a very important part of his life because we live in a world where everything is about knowing. Everything is about judging other people and sides and divide and conquer and whatever else.
Yeah.
And so, humility, the way I see is that it is the antidote to judgment. And judgment is such a heavy burden to bear, such a heavy burden to carry for us all, whether we know it or don't know it. It's a very heavy burden that we actually judge other people, that we think we can be a better them. We think we can be better than they are, having no idea what they have gone through, no idea of their genetics, no idea of their lineage, no idea of all the situations and experiences and traumatic things they have gone through. And we have the audacity to believe that we can become a better them. That is ridiculous. So the way
Yes.
to change that is to look at life with a bit more perspective and with an essence of humility. It is taking that judgment off your back and saying, I don't know, and that is okay.
Well, Gideon, we achieved the end of our podcast episode. It was such an immense, immense pleasure to have you here. I think it will help so many people that might find themselves in a dark place, for a while or stuck for one reason or another. Give some lights to those who might didn't see it.
I hope that my success criteria is that if anybody reads this book or listen to this and they are inspired to just do something or that it shifts something, that's all that matters. If I hear of anybody who reads this book and go for a long walk and that changes their life, that is what I want. That is what I would love to see. Not because my book is so important, but because they experienced a shift of a long walk or an experience that they're pursuing. And
So
if
it's more
people,
than a book, it's a project. Can we say
yeah,
that, Gideon,
yeah,
right?
definitely. I mean, I think walking long distance can change the world in a very significant way, in a very important way, because we had a very easy time taking things from the outside and in. We sort of established that.
Absolutely.
But when we that's what I've experienced. When we walk far enough and we go deep enough, we will begin to lean on ourselves, and that is one of the things we really need. So if people see this conversation or hear this conversation, they're not interested, but they don't want to just buy the book right away. Of course, please do if you want to. But if you want to just have a taste, you can. I've sent you a link, and you can read the first chapter of the book, which is the first part until the walk actually starts. So you get a sense of what you're in for here. And
so by the way, where actually they can find you, Gideon, just for people to know?
Yes. So the website is thepilgrimspirit.com, and there you can also find the I think you can probably link to the free chapter in your show notes.
Yeah, I have looked into it, and I could see that there is the first chapter for free to download.
Yes.
So yeah.
So that's the way to get started. And then if you're interested in talking to me, you of course just send me an email, or we can schedule a call or whatever. And I'm open to supporting anybody who wants to change their life. So I think that's why I'm here. So and then I just hope that people will connect with this pilgrim spirit and take the steps ahead and never give up. Just keep going. Whatever happens,
I agree. Never give up. It's never too late.
Going.
I absolutely agree with you.
If things are hard, challenging, it matters, but keep going. Keep going. Take the steps. Never give up. Keep going. No matter what happens in life, it's hard sometimes, but keep going.
Thank you, Gideon. Thank you so very much for your willingness to share with me and the listeners of Rewire to Rise this amazing experience, life experience that you have had.
You're welcome. I was happy to have the conversation with you, and I'll be happy to do it again.
Yeah, thank you. I will keep in mind that.